PM hits the rally trail this week as we come to you live from Perth for the API Rally Australia. Of what they're in for over the 4 days of API Rally Australia.
On every day they set out on a new leg. Leg 1 takes them south of the city, as you can see, a long way south. Then leg 1 took them north of the city rather. Leg 2 took them south of the city. Leg 3 took them just north of the city. That's this morning's leg. All this time we've been waiting to see Possum Bourne against Neil Bates. There's Possum and Neil Bates on the other side.
And this should be fantastic. A chance for Bates to perhaps even the score in this Langley Park Superstage, of course, with his longtime partner, Coral Taylor.
Now, Bourne will turn in first, of course, because he's on the shortest way down here this time. Bates marginally later on the turn. This car of Bates, a shorter wheelbase than that of Possum Bourne, more nimble around this course, most likely to be the car that will fling underneath the Qantas flyover better than any other vehicle in the event. Bates very circumspect underneath there, not wanting to put a dent on this new World Rally Championship Corolla this first time out. Possum, however, understands this car well, been rallying it all year. Look at the sideways motion of Possum Bourne, Craig Vincent urging him on.
Neil had the Celica, of course, when he was beaten for 5th in Rally New Zealand by Possum. He's trialled this Corolla once. That was in the Indonesian rally, and a lot of things went wrong, but of course you'd expect that with the development of a car such as this new World Rally car. And Possum really throwing up the dirt, so is Bates. This is a great matchup here.
This is Bates' run, however. He's going to fly over the jump while Bourne has to back off underneath it. Bates now takes the lead.
Looks like he has got the initiative, Bates, and we'll see what happens when they get back onto Riverside Drive.
This is a great confidence booster for Neil Bates. Possum Bourne a little too sideways as he comes back onto the main straight. Here's down Riverside Drive, but it's Neil Bates to take the win, and he'll do it quite substantially on Possum Bourne. And against him is Richard Burns, the number 2 driver for the Winfield Mitsubishi team. They call his car a Charisma. In fact, it's a Mitsubishi Lancer like anything else, rebadged for the Japanese market.
Yes, a Lancer Evolution. In fact, so this is the next step up, so to speak, from the car that you saw Rodinsky driving earlier, but as John pointed out, not necessarily quicker over this very, very short distance.
Now Burns, as we said earlier, the bridesmaid for Mitsubishi this year, as Loix flings the Celica over the jump. This is the last time out for the Toyota Celica. Loix will now go to a Corolla along with the rest of Toyota Team Europe. So Loix given the opportunity to see the Celica off, and he's really doing so in great form. Richard Burns marginally ahead of Freddie Loix as they come on to Riverside Drive. The actual split time is at the top of the straight, so even though it appears that the other car is leading, the time's taken at the top of the straight.
Loix co-drivers Ben Smeets, both from Belgium, and Loix's nickname is Fast Freddy, regarded as a very, very promising prospect.
But it's Burns over the top, and Burns, as they come down now, has the marginal advantage, but it's going to be close. Loix over the second jump into the final corner. Burns looking for the easy way out, gets it nicely lined up, flings it onto the straight, 3rd gear, 4th gear. Loix has got the indicator on there, side by side.
Loix by a couple of lengths so far, and
it's Loix.
Oh, yes, Loix.
0.1 of a second.
Fast Freddy, the fastest time of the night so far.
Okay, it's going to say the Celica is still a very good car.
The 10th matchup, they're away. You're looking at Kenneth Eriksson and Staffan Pomander from Sweden in car number 4, matched up with the Toyota Castrol team of Didier Auriol and Dennis Girardet.
And this is the first of 3 major battles on the night. The real World Championship contenders now down to the wire. 136.6 is Freddie Loix. We believe 135.9 on Neil Bates. So there's a time to match.
Eriksson absolutely airborne there. You saw from inside the car Eriksson's form a little earlier in the program. That's the car number 7 of Didier Auriol. 1990 Rally Australia winner, 1994 World Champion. That was in the Celica, of course. Now he's in the Toyota World Rally car, the Corolla, up against Ericsson and the Subaru Impreza World Rally car. Current Asia Pacific champion, may win it for 2 years in a row. Competing, interestingly enough, only in the gravel events this year, swapping with the Italian in the second Subaru Works team, and that, John, has produced some very interesting battles because this actual car, the second Subaru, is only 2 points off the championship lead, but because they've shared drivers, those points have been split up, and really, that car is no contest.
This, however, is the real contest right here. Didier Oriol flinging the Corolla around onto the main straight. The time to beat is Neil Bates, 35.9. The record is 35. There is now a new record. Didier Oriol breaks the Langley Park record of 1:34.6.
Didier, the fastest time, new record.
Yeah, but I have a bad start. I start a little late. And I am surprised in the first twisty corner. It's very slippery and I use the handbrake and I go a little too sideways. But okay, after I drive well.
Cannon, 4 times World Rally champion. The guru of rallying in the world, up against Colin McRae, the man who would be king.
McRae slightly in front. This guy is absolute dynamite in the car. You never know what's going to happen. He's wild. Oh, he's sideways. Well, there you go. Precisely what we said. He ripped away from Kankanen early, but then got into trouble. Amazing.
But he's back into it again, Bill. He's not done that much damage, and he's back into it, but he's got to back off there. That's obviously unsettled him as Kankanen comes over the jump. Kankanen, the man who could have won 2 rounds of the World Rally Championship this year, but backed off to give the wins to his teammate Carlos Sainz, so that Sainz could be in contention for the World Championship. Kankanen coming into the event only halfway through, of course.
Yes, and still collecting an absolute bucket load of points. So he gets it sideways there, but of course a lot of pressure on the tyres as they brake hard on that bitumen. Kankanen has so many points really though from the few rounds he's contested. What could he have done, John, if he'd been in this World Rally Championship from the beginning?
Well, Carlos Sainz goes to Toyota next year. Kankanen is confirmed as #1 driver for Ford next year, so then we'll know what Kankanen can do.
Well, he certainly has shown plenty in the past. Over that little jump there, Juha Kankanen, comfortable buffer now on Colin McRae, who made that very early mistake. And there's McRae's form, still keeping in touch with Kankanen, but probably lost too much time as they head down the straight. Yes, Kankanen with almost half the straight between he and Colin McRae when they launched themselves back onto the bitumen for the last time. And just outside the quickest so far, we've got 0.7. Second fastest though.
You are second fastest time. Everything okay?
Yeah, fine, no problem. Went well.
So you're looking forward to the next 2 days?
Yeah, it starts tomorrow. It's much nicer than. But this is in a way, it's good for the spectators as well.
Look at the concentration on his face, and he's up against Carlos Sainz, the man who's second in the World Championship. Now, Mäkinen can win the 1997 World Championship at API Rally Australia. He only has to win to do that. Carlos Sainz is the man who has to beat him if he's to remain in contention in the title hunt.
And winning here is not easy. All the top drivers have had some non-finishes and 0 points results this year, so it's quite possible to come away with absolutely nothing, no matter how good you are. And a 10-point result here, by contrast, for Carlos Sainz, could knock this guy for 6.
Very, very much so. I think both of these guys, having seen what happened to Colin McRae, might be just a little bit cautious on this run through.
And as a result, could leave Neil Bates of Australia, well, I beg your pardon, second quickest at least, because we saw that great record run. But still, Sainz team with Louis Moya, and of course Mäkinen with Seppo Harrian. Very, very experienced drivers, and very, very neat so far in the Langley Park Superstage.
Sainz in the lead underneath the Qantas jump. Look for it over the top. There goes Mäkinen. Big jump from Mäkinen. Now Mäkinen takes over the advantage. Just 2 corners remaining. Mäkinen down into it. Look at the lights of Sainz coming up on the inside. It's a faster run round the outside if Mäkinen holds it in tight. Now he gets the power down. Now heading for the main straight. It's Sainz onto the main straight first. Sainz is going to do it. Sainz going for the record. No, he doesn't do it by 0.2 of a second. Didier Auriol takes the record and the ninth, but Carlos Sainz, a brilliant run, 1:34.8, and only 0.1 of a second behind is Tommy Mäkinen.
So at the end of the first stage of API Rally Australia, the Sainz-Moyer combination with a 1:34, but you'll notice the times there, they've been rounded down to the last second. That's what they do in the World Rally Championship, so equal times for Auriol and Sainz, likewise Mäkinen and Ericsson.
In fifth position was Kankinen and Repo. Then in sixth position, the first of the Australians, Bates and Taylor on a 1:35. Sensational. Then came the young firebrand from Scotland, Richard Burns, and Freddie Loix from Belgium. Rounded it out.
McRae and Grist. Colin McRae, of course, with that little error early in his super stage with a 1:38, but of course a long way to go. Possumbourne, what a battle was to unfold between he and Neil Bates over the next few days. More on that, of course, throughout the program. Shinozuka and Gacentis in 11th, and Fujimoto and Arnie Hertz making up the top 12.
Out on the roads east of Perth, thick dust became an instant hazard. On the first stage of day 2, absolutely still conditions created blindingly thick dust. With a clear track, first-seeded Mäkinen blasted through the 10-kilometre Kev special stage in 6 minutes and 14 seconds. But for those behind, residual dust was dangerous. Colin McRae was the first to fall victim to the conditions. He kissed a bank with the left rear corner, ripping off his rear wing. Closely behind him, Juha Kankinen was on maximum attack. In a sport where an error of a few millimetres can spell disaster, the 4 times world champion miscued. His right rear wheel and suspension assembly pushed way out of shape. Kankinen dropped more than a minute. Worse still, he had to complete the next stage, the 30-kilometre Helena, with the wheel still askew. In Europe, 3 times Australian champion Neil Bates was out to make no mistakes. His frustration that he became trapped behind Kankinen and dropped almost 40 seconds behind on stage 3. Bates' teammate, former world champion Didier Auriol, was flying. Winner at Langley Park, Auriol stamped his authority on Kevs, a time of 6 minutes and 14 seconds, clear of Tommy Mäkinen and Richard Burns, both on 6 minutes and 15 seconds. The only casualty, his front spoiler, taken out by the ruts, which made conditions even more challenging. Stage 3, and stung by his second crash in 2 stages, Colin McRae found brilliant form. He cut loose, putting down a 17 minutes 9 second time in the conditions of brilliant effort. But he's surprised that both teammate Ericsson and the flying Richard Burns almost matched him, the 2 of them just a second behind. It was shaping up as one of the closest API Rally Australias on record. Accumulated time had taken Auriol into the lead, 2 seconds clear of Burns, who was 1 second up on Ericsson. And just 11 seconds separated Auriol back to 5th-placed McRae. API Rally Australia could decide the 1997 World Championship. Mäkinen had to win. Already 30 seconds behind on penalty and 10 seconds down on the road, the Flying Finn pressed hard on stage 4, the never-before-used 32-kilometre Flins. Mäkinen plunged another 40 seconds down the leaderboard. In an inspired drive, teammate Richard Burns pressed the advantage on the longest stage of the day. His time, a 19 minutes 17 seconds, equal to Kenneth Ericsson and just 3 seconds off the flying McRae. But even as they were accepting congratulations, down in 14th position, Juha Kankinen decided that if he couldn't win, he'd at least show them he'd been there. The mighty Kankinen recorded a time of 19 minutes and 7 seconds, an incredible 7 seconds clear of the entire stage 4 had not been kind to the top end of the field. Carlos Sainz hit a rock, flattening his wheel rim, but under the rules, having to use the wheel and tyre assembly on the next stage. Auriol dropped from the lead. His World Rally car was still under development, and the new sequential gearbox was malfunctioning. Worse, one problem led to another. Sometimes the forgotten man of world rallying, Richard Burns on Mitsubishi, was now in the lead, just 1 second ahead of Subaru's Kenneth Ericsson and 6 seconds clear of Colin McRae, also on Subaru. Auriol was back in 4th, Sainz was in 5th, and Mäkinen 6th. And then came the first of the Australasians. A magnificent seesawing battle was developing between Neil Bates, Possum Bourne and Ed Ordinsky. Bates had won Langley Park by 3 seconds from Bourne, but from dawn on day 2, the Kiwi was determined to make Neil earn every second. He took a second off Bates on stage 2 and again on stage 3. Then on 4, he claimed 12 seconds to move 1 place up on Bates. 5.3 kilometres around the York Railway Special Stage, much of it is spent in the air. The tight opening section suited the new short wheelbase Corolla, and Didier Auriol used it to good advantage to take an early lead in the stage, a time of 2 minutes 49 seconds. Colin McRae fought back, his Subaru shredding pieces of bodywork and its rear window, a legacy of his earlier crash. His time, 1 second slower, and teammate Ericsson was 1 second slower again. Then came Richard Burns. The 26-year-old was electric. His time was equal fastest with Auriol, and he confirmed his outright rally lead, a scant 7 seconds up on the Subarus. Stages 6 and 7 are identical. 6.8 kilometres around, you get to drive the Muresk section twice in close succession. So with practice, you're always fastest on the second run. That's the way it was with Colin McRae. He punched out a 3 minute 33 the first time, and then he broke the stage record on round 2, a 3 minute 29 second lap. The record of 3:31 had stood to Juha Kankkunen for 4 years. Burns tried to answer. His time on run 1 was 3:34, a second slower than McRae. On run 2, young Burns equalled Kankkunen's record, but that was still 2 seconds behind the Scot. Stage 8, the awesomely punishing 28-kilometre Berwiking, was anything but Mickey Mouse. In just over 16 minutes of high-speed power play, the leadership in API Rally Australia leapfrogged. Burns was slow, a 16 minute and 36 seconds. McRae was 7 seconds faster, but his teammate Ericsson was ablaze. He took a full 10 seconds off Burns and hurtled into the lead, 2 seconds clear of McRae. The Subaru 555 team was now in a position of dominance, and McRae's outside chance of taking the world title was looking at least a little firmer. Auriol was 4th, with championship hope Saints pressing in hard in 5th. Mäkinen was a distant 6th, a position worth just 1 point in the World Series. 2 stages from home, and Saints and Auriol tied for the win, both of them bouncing off the final corner after the flying finish. Ericsson, Burns and McRae were each separated by a second, so Ericsson was opening a comfort gap. The drive of the stage, however, was Possum Bourne, who broke his tie with Neil Bates to move 1 second ahead in their intense Trans-Tasman battle. The writing was about to go up on the wall. Ericsson in the lead, a pathfinder for championship contender McRae. The two to swap places towards rally's end, and McRae to score maximum points. At least that was on paper. 10 kilometres from the finish of Elena 2, the wall crumbled, and so did Ericsson's car. He'd hit a rock so badly that the suspension had collapsed. He lost more than a minute ploughing to the finish and then ploughed on to the service park. For the Subaru team, it was, if not a disaster, at least a huge disappointment. Their recovery to get the wounded car back in the event was magnificent. It was Juha Kankkunen, now simply working to develop his car from midfield, who took the stage win. McRae went to the nighttime super special at Langley Park, 8 seconds clear of Richard Burns. He took it easy, a 1 minute 37, 3 seconds behind stage winners Kankkunen and Auriol. But Burns was slower again, a second off McRae. So at the end of the first full day, it was Colin McRae who held a 9-second lead in API Rally Australia. So at the end of day 2, The leader on the leaderboard was Colin McRae with Nicky Grist, but he was only 9 seconds clear of Richard Burns and Robert Reid. In third place, 22 seconds behind, were Oriel and Girardet, and then 20 seconds back, Carlos Sainz and Lewis Moyer.
But Carlos Sainz had Tommy Mäkinen right where he wanted him, and that was behind him. But for how long? Mäkinen and Harian in 5th position. Then Ericsson. Very big shame there, what happened to Kenneth Ericsson after being on the fly. Then the first of the Aussie teams, Neil Bates and Coral Taylor, getting ahead of arch rivals Possum Bourne and Craig Vincent.
Then came Ed Ordensky in the Group A Mitsubishi Lancer. Behind him, the Belgian, Freddie Loix. Then from Argentina, Sufan with Christie. And then finally, Takaguchi and Pickering rounded out the top 12. It took 5 anxious minutes for Richard Burns to coax his Mitsubishi into life on day 3, and maybe it unsettled him, because on special stage 1, the 4-kilometre Langford, he was swamped by his teammate and rivals. Tommy Mäkinen sent the strongest of messages by claiming equal stage victory with Didier Oriol, both clear of Carlos Sainz and Kenneth Ericsson. There was only 3 seconds in it, but Burns was back in 5th. Murray Pines is probably the best liked stage of the entire event. Its mixture of fast and slow corners and the tight fit through the trees is a driver's challenge. The record laid at Tommy Mäkinen, an 11 minute 28 set last year. It didn't last long. McRae took 11 seconds off it.
It felt good, but it's difficult to say. The stage is quite clean, there wasn't a lot of gravel on it, so we need to wait and see what everybody else does.
But Burns was fighting back, an 11.13. He was now within 3 seconds of McRae for the outright rally lead.
That stage was quite good, actually. We had a good time in there last year, so I know it fairly well. But I think the road's cleaning a bit for everyone behind as well, so we don't just have to look in front.
The pace was on. Saints an 11.14. Oriel clipped the bank an 11.16. Ericsson an 11.12. The branches jammed under his spoiler, testimony to his determination. But then came world champion Tommy Mäkinen, and he claimed back his record, an 11.07.
Yeah, that was good. Good stage.
11.07.
Bit better grip. We are a little bit behind 5th, 6th car. It makes it better.
On Stirling West, Carlos Sainz assaulted the stage record. He took 2 seconds off it to win from Mäkinen, with Oriel 3rd and McRae, perhaps a little conservative, 4th. Strangely, Richard Burns had again fallen off the pace, 9 seconds behind Sainz, who was now within striking distance of Oriel. 2 stages, 2 new records. The decision to run API Rally Australia later in the year, in dry conditions, was paying spectacular dividends. Stirling East is the longest of the event, and the most demanding. Kenneth Ericsson held the record, and he became the stage's only major withdrawal, beaching his Subaru and joining Juha Kankinen in event retirement. For the others, it was just spectacular. McRae blasted through, 34 seconds under the record. Burns was 12 seconds slower, his problems now becoming obvious.
It was very slippery. I think we had the wrong tyres. It was sliding all over.
Mäkinen matched McRae's time, annoyed that he'd lost concentration when he saw Ericsson's crash. Didier Oriel was slower, at 20.47. The conditions are concerned.
It's not easy with the shadow, with the sun, you know, it's not easy to see the corner. It's difficult to keep the tire also, and it's very slippery.
And then came Carlos Sainz, a mighty 20.26, took 48 seconds off the record. Carlos had leapfrogged into 3rd, ahead of Oriel, and was only 6 seconds behind Burns. Of the Australasians, Possum Bourne and Neil Bates were tied on the stage at 21.27. But Bates was in trouble with the new World Rally Championship Toyota. The problem was to get worse. Bates relinquishing his private battle to Bourne. But it didn't work that way. Tommy Mäkinen came out fighting. He slammed through the next stage in 18 minutes and 40 seconds, 12 seconds clear of his nearest rival Saints. Team orders to drive a conservative rally were forgotten. Wellington West, Mäkinen and Saints tied for victory. 7 seconds clear of Oriel, 8 ahead of McRae, 12 clear of Burns. Burns was demoralised. Saints was firing. He'd overtaken Burns for 2nd place and was now closing rapidly on outright leader McRae. In 3 stages, Saints took 12 seconds off the man renowned as the fastest sprint driver in the world. And headed for the API television league, he was just 9 seconds off the #1 position.
We're with the 10th placed Raul Safan of Argentina with Martin Christie in the Toyota Celica GT4 and going through a very precipitous part of this course, as you can see, stage 19, heading towards Harvey Reservoir. Raul Safan of Argentina, Martin Christie co-driving in the Celica GT4 special stage 19.
It's the API special stage, previously called Harvey Weir, one of the most popular and certainly one of the fastest stages on API Rally Australia. Safan 10th currently in API Rally Australia. He's been down as low as 15th, but as cars start to drop out, his consistency has brought him up through the field. An ST205 Celica GT4, four-wheel drive, turbocharged. Just look at that dust.
Absolutely smothering us here in the commentary position as he whizzed past, heading towards the end of this stage, well outside, as you would expect, the stage record of under 5 minutes, 4:56 in fact, set by Juha Kankkunen when Nicky Grist was his co-driver back in 1995. Grist with Colin McRae this year, who is leading API Rally Australia at this point.
Down towards the flying finish. The flying finish, in fact, allows people to go through the finish line at full speed and then gives them about 200 metres to back off before they reach the stop control. And there he is there, 5:42.7.
This is Australia's Ed Ordinsky now in car 11.
Ordinsky engaged in a huge battle with Possum Bourne and with Neil Bates, the three Australians, two of them in World Rally Championship or Group A cars. Possum Bourne in his own machine have been swapping stage times and have been within only seconds of each other for almost 2 days now.
Ordinsky surges past the commentary position. He's 1 minute exactly behind the 7th placed Neil Bates in API Rally Australia with a further 19 seconds to Possum Bourne. Plenty of stages left, but time running out, you might say, for Ed Ordinsky.
Ordinsky still carrying the scars on the front left-hand side of the motor car from an off earlier today when he straight-lined 2 corners and went straight through the briar bushes.
Mark Stacey, the co-driver, in the Lancer Evolution 3.
Nicely thrown, Ordinsky, as he comes up to the flying finish. A time of 5 minutes and 7 seconds. Freddie Loix now on the course, car 9. Freddie Loix, the Belgian driver. Loix is lying in 9th position in Rally Australia.
Part of the Toyota team, but not with a World Rally car.
He's actually giving the the Toyota Celica its last run in a World Rally Championship. He'll move to the new World Rally Championship Corolla next year. Loix, a good, solid performer. Actually, that's to understate the situation as he flings himself past the commentary position.
And very, very wide, throwing up a lot of gravel as well as dust.
Loix is a big chance next year to find himself in a full works drive from one of the teams. They've all picked him as the coming young star. Had a spin earlier this morning.
27 years of age. Freddie Loix with co-driver Sven Smets, just 25. Much younger than many of their seasoned rivals in the World Championship. Over 5 minutes now. Remember, the stage record is under 5 minutes, 4:56. Juha Kankkunen.
And stops the clock at 5:11 for Loix. Now on the course is Possum Bourne, the New Zealand champion, twice Australian champion, defending Australian champion. Possum Bourne in the Subaru WRX, co-driver Craig Vincent. Bourne has just taken over the lead in this private battle between the Australian drivers, or Australasian drivers.
He has less power than the new Bates Corolla. Bates has been competing against Bourne all year in Rally Australia in the Australian Rally Championship, but that was in a Celica.
Now you're riding with Neil Bates. This is the Australian champion, and he's off.
Oh.
Bates is over. He's gone into the bushes, and it's all... No, can he get back? Can he get back? Bates has had Huge problems with this Toyota Corolla today. Car's still mobile. He's looking for a way out of it.
Trying desperately. It's hard to tell from the aerial shot, but there's probably huge lumps and bumps down there in the bushes and probably a couple of big rocks as well. Who knows what damage has been done underneath the car. In fact, I can see a rock there very close by, and anything could have happened. We saw Juha Kankinen smash up the underside of his car only yesterday, and Bates still trying to extract himself.
And you can see already the big problem.
Back with Possum Bourne now. And this really leaves the way open for Possum, who's been having a marvellous battle with Bates. Only 19 seconds between them. But, of course, now, look at Bates. He's back on track. Amazing stuff and things hanging off the back of the car everywhere.
Well, Bates can owe that to the fact that on board are a set of diff locks which allowed him to reset his four-wheel drive. In two-wheel drive, he couldn't have got out. Here's Possum Bourne now, charging towards the finish.
Well, Bates left the door open for Possum, who just flies past our commentary position here using every inch of these narrow dirt tracks with this amazing ball-bearing surface. There's Bourne's time. Well, pressure telling on Neil Bates, or perhaps some mechanical problem, who knows?
Definitely mechanical. Well, I do actually feel it was definitely a mechanical problem. Bates has been suffering from it for the last three stages, and the way that off occurred, his car switched from four-wheel drive to two-wheel drive and took him straight off the course.
So still Bates wrestling not only with Bourne, but with the World Rally car given to him by Toyota. There's the time for Bourne, a 5:08.4. Here he comes.
Bates now. Just look at the damage on the car, but he's into it again, and he's back in four-wheel drive.
And, of course, John, a stack like that must do a lot to your confidence. Must be very hard to get yourself back focused on the stage.
Well, in a way, but in another way, you sort of expect it as Bates's bodywork moves all over the chassis of the motor car. It's really taken a hard knock going down into there. The problem has been that the handbrake, when it pulls up to fling the car through a corner, disconnects the four-wheel drive and puts the car back in two-wheel drive.
Neil Bates attacking this stage once again with incredible ferocity. He's way, way outside his rivals' times, but he is giving it all he can because there are still 5 stages left in API Rally Australia.
Yeah, you should never give up. Neil desperately wants to finish Rally Australia. He will retain this World Rally Championship car for next year to contest the Australian Rally Championship, and that's a big plus for the championship and a huge plus for Bates.
His first major test in the Toyota World Rally car was in Indonesia. Lots of problems there mechanically, and obviously still settling into this car, a 5:55.4, and now we're with Richard Burns, and this is another big talent on the horizon of the World Rally Championship, driving the Charisma GT, which is a rebadged Mitsubishi Evolution 4. So really, for all intents and purposes, it is a Mitsubishi, but it's part of the Team Ralliart, of course. This 26-year-old Burns, who, like Freddie Loix, is on the up, with Robert Reid, the co-driver, only 31 years of age, the all-British team.
50. Flat right, long, 40, easy left plus and easy left, long, 50, crest over 20, 90 right long, slippy exit. 100, fast right plus long, tightens maybe long.
Back with Richard Burns now.
Now, Burns is a man who's been struggling with tyre choice throughout the day. His car's been too slippery. He's dropped back through the field. He was, in fact, at one point in second position, relinquished that position to Carlos Sainz, and has been dropping back ever since. Tyre choice has been the problem. This time it looks like he may have it right.
Richard Burns in the Mitsubishi car, and Mitsubishi choosing not to develop a World Rally car at this stage, staying with the great package that they've had for the last couple of years. And of course, Burns, a winner of last year's Rally New Zealand, second in this year's Safari Rally, third in the RAC Rally. Still learning the ropes. That's an admission from him rather than going flat out.
Doesn't get enough time in the car is the problem, but he's done a deal with Mitsubishi. He will remain with them for next year, and he said only on the basis that he gets a full drive for the full year. 4:54. Richard Burns takes the lead.
Oriel exploded into API Rally Australia with a win in the first Langley Park Super Stage, and has been right up there all the way. 4th overall going into this stage. And this is another of the Toyota World Rally cars on display.
has been experiencing some gearbox problems. The sequential gearbox of this car still under development, but beautifully set up in a huge left hand, possibly a 5 left corner. In other words, in 4th gear at around 140 kilometres an hour, Bill. Just spectacular.
Well, it's hard to describe to people at home, but the surface of these roads is quite incredible. Just heading up to this commentary position in a higher car at 50 kilometres an hour, under brakes, the thing was moving around. It is that slippery, quite amazing. And these guys are doing 150 kilometres an hour in some places.
4:54 the time to beat. Not going to do it. But close, yes, 4:54.8. This is the man who can take the record right away from Burns right this moment. The leader of the rally, Colin McRae.
Colin McRae on the charge in the very first corner of API Rally Australia. That was on the first Langley Park Super Stage way back on Thursday night. Seems like a long time ago. He put it into the curve and hit some trouble and was way offline, but has managed to fight his way back big time. Of course, that was only 2.2 of more than 1,500 kilometres in this rally.
Oh, McRae over the jump, just sideways with the wheels off the ground, as you saw. McRae is flying. He has to, because Saints now is on maximum attack. Saints is only 9 seconds behind him and closing. McRae knows it, and he has to respond. There's no opportunity for him to take it easy. He has to go flat out. These guys have lifted themselves this afternoon to a new level.
Amazing stuff from Colin McRae. Never actually gives less than 100%. Nicky Grist, his co-driver, who of course partnered the great Juha Kankkunen to win a world championship and in fact clocked the previous best time at this stage in 1995. He says he can make McRae a better, a safer driver, a more consistent performer, because he has enormous talent, like a loaded gun.
McRae so smooth on this stage. This is the secret to this section. You have to be smooth. McRae just a little bit of handbrake, gets the thing sideways, balances on the power and the brakes, feet working like a ballet dancer down on the floor of the motor car.
Subaru Impreza World Rally car, and here we go with a 4:54.3. However, as John pointed out, that'll go down as an equal first because it's timed to the seconds.
Saints now on the course. This is the man who's been throwing out the huge challenge today. On one section alone, he took some 40 seconds off the stage record.
Well, this is a critical run for Saints. He has 24 seconds on Burns. Now, Burns and Oriol were having a very close battle. 8 seconds separated them going into this stage. They've had equal times now, so that stays the same. Can Saints put some time into Burns and Oriol? This is the big question.
En cuarta, acaba calientes de tierra, Roderas. Para derecha rápido, ojo poco atrás de tierra, Santi, mucho ras. Sasar mucho para izquierda, con la más posible quinta de tierra, ras, para uno. Derecha rasante, frenando mucho, acaba derecha media de tierra.
Saints over the top of the crest this time. Much more balanced, in fact, than Colin McRae. Power to the ground. While ever your wheels are on the ground and pointing straight, that's when you're going fast. And that's exactly what Carlos Sainz is doing here.
Carlos Sainz, 2 wins, 2 seconds from his last 5 outings in the World Rally Championship. Had a pretty good start with a couple of seconds early in the year, but then went completely flat mid-season. He is now really challenging Mäkinen for the World Championship. Only 9 points separates them. Flying past the commentary position, throwing up a heap of dust and putting that Ford Escort into contention.
A little bit of understeer, however, through the corner, which may have slowed him ever so slightly. Not nearly as well balanced as McRae through that corner.
There's the time ticking away. 4:54 is the fastest so far. Now we're heading into the really critical part of this very, very fast stage in Rally Australia. 19 stages down after this is completed and only 5 to go.
Sometimes they're deceptive. Sometimes they look as if they're going slow when they're really going absolutely extraordinary.
And have a look at that.
And that's what Carlos Sainz just did.
3 identical times so far, and now we have Tommi Mäkinen in 5th place, trying to win the World Championship right here and save himself a lot of worry for the final round.
Mäkinen was speaking to his team management earlier at the midway point of this rally, and they were saying, listen, we'll send Burns out to challenge the others. You take it easy, you go for points. One section later, Mäkinen took the stage win, looked me straight in the eye and said, I cannot possibly settle for only 2 points in the championship. I must win.
Ja pitkä oikein eri plus yli nyppylän. Ja pitkä vasen eri kiristyy. 3. Nyppy heti nyppy. Tiukka serpo oikein alas risteys.
Mackinnon attack. Tommy Mackinnon hoping to put some time on the 4 drivers ahead of him at API Rally Australia. Critical stage this for him because they've all gone so well. Sainz in particular, the man who's really threatening Mackinnon for the World Championship, has clocked a 4:49 and is the man to beat right now. He is so close to McRae to lead this championship, and that's a precious 10 points as opposed to the 6 points you get for coming second, John.
Yes, indeed. This rally will go right down to the wire at the RAC rally in Great Britain without a shadow of a doubt now, but Mackinnon is not prepared to give it away even now. He knows if he can keep the pressure on the others, maybe he can force them into error.
Tommy Mackinnon wanted to seal the World Championship right here as he did in 1996. Looks like that won't happen now. However, he can put some time on and perhaps get some precious points. At the moment, he trails Oriol by 17 seconds. That was the time difference going into this stage. The difference between Mackinnon's 5th place and Oriol's 4th.
Mackinnon deeper under brakes onto the bridge than either of his 2 competitors, but he's slower than Sainz and takes a 4:53.
Breaking stage 2, Carlos Sainz with a 4:49 ahead of his World Championship rival Tommy Mackinnon, and the 3rd factor in the 1997 championship, Colin McRae. Burns made up the top 4.
And the interesting thing for McRae is that he's now only 4 seconds ahead of Sainz. Now, Sainz won't make that up tonight at Langley Park, but boy, oh boy, he's going to give McRae a sleepless night as they head for Bunnings, north of Perth tomorrow.
Ed Ordinsky, the best of the Australians there, with a top 6 finish. Freddie Loix makes up the top 8. Outside that, we have Alistair McRae, the younger of the McRaes. Then Robin Pera, Tully Chalice of Western Australia in 11th on this stage, followed by...
And that gives McRae leadership on this stage in the Formula 2 category. Then Sabira also in Formula 2, Kanishi, a Group N car, Arai, a Group N car, and Miyoshi car as well. Look how close they are, only a second separating the 3 of them. Langley Park Saturday night, and Colin McRae took a dive, deliberately 6 seconds behind Carlos Sainz to put himself second in the rally and second on the roads. He'd made Sainz the road sweeper and potentially much slower. The start of the stage, and Sainz was flying. His target, the record of 18 minutes 26, set last year ironically by McRae. 12 Ks into the battle, Sainz was immobile. His rally and the World Championship shot to pieces. Taciturn McRae could hardly believe his good fortune. Now, for a change of tactics. Behind him, however, his rivals were not prepared to concede. In 4th place now, Mackinnon took stage victory, closing within 10 seconds of Didier Oriol. Oriol, in turn, was chasing 2nd place Burns. The deficit after this first stage, just 2 seconds. Stage 22, the infamous Bunnings water splash. Severe body flex over the jump sprung Burns' door. He still broke the stage record. 25 seconds in front, McRae lost it. This incident costing him 2 seconds. The others are firing. Mackinnon determined that with just 2 stages to go, he could still pick up major places, maybe even win the world title right here in Perth. Couldn't have asked for a more nail-biting finish. Tommy Mackinnon's scorching time over the second last stage put the pressure right back on Colin McRae. Then on the last stage, McRae, starting first on the road, set a time of 16:51. Well, that seemed good enough for secure victory. The Scot wasn't about to make any brash predictions. So it was all down to the flying Finn. A time of 16:38 would clinch the world title. But he knew he'd failed.
I made a few mistakes and I was trying a few places a bit too much, and I lost perhaps 5 seconds.
Incredible situation there. The final stages looking at the leaderboard right now.
McRae and Grist the winners, of course. Mackinnon and Harayan second, Oriol and Giroday third, Burns and Reid in 4th position. Then come the first of the Australians, or Australasians, Possum Bourne, outlasted Ed Ordinsky. Ordinsky, however, got his first ever World Championship point, and there'll be celebrations tonight. Then Freddie Loix separating the other Australians from Neil Bates after his horror day yesterday.
Moving along now to the next 4. And looks like that's it. We've got the top 8 there of the World Rally Championship. Yes, victory today, but he could have done with a little help from rival drivers to put some points between he and Tommy Mackinnon in API Rally Australia, but at least for now he can celebrate what has been a marvellous event for him. And the champagne looks a little tame, Barry, but not now.
Yeah, still give you a bad headache though. Nicky Brest, his co-driver, was saying that he's made a better driver out of Colin in that he's calmed him down a bit. You know, he used to get a bit typical Scotch temper, I guess, and calmed him down a bit. Great team, you know, really. They've done good. You saw them this weekend. I mean, they tried really hard, and at the end of the day, they got what they deserved.
So a British victory in API Rally Australia. Nothing left for McRae to do right here except to celebrate in the most important style and something that many of the crowd here have come to see. Although after a couple of donuts, they won't be looking at much at all. As far as place will be filled with smoke and a new set of tyres will be required. Great result for Subaru, still alive, and now they have to work out some strategy. They're going to take 3 cars into the final round of the World Rally Championship, and of course 2 of those will be simply there to help Colin McRae secure the World Championship. And of course, as we mentioned, it's quite possible that Tommy Mackinnon doesn't finish in England, but it's a big ask to win 2 rallies in a row. Let's ride now for the last time in Australia this year with the API Rally Australia champion Colin McRae in the middle of Forest Place in front of a very happy crowd.
Oh, how good is that?